15 years ago, Audrey Bennett signed her divorce papers, walked out of a lawyer's office into a cold October rain, got into her car, and disappeared. No body, no note, no trace. Just an empty driveway and a marriage that ended in silence. For 15 years, her ex-husband, Cole Whitmore, lived with the weight of that silence. He rebuilt his name, rebuilt his business, rebuilt his life, brick by brick, on top of a secret he thought was buried for good. He told himself the questions had finally stopped. He told himself he was safe. He was wrong. Because tonight, on a quiet street in a quiet town, a teenage girl he had never seen before is standing on his porch. And the moment Cole opens that door, he understands that whatever he thought he had buried 15 years ago never actually stayed buried. Let's rewind. Because to understand why Cole's hands are shaking right now, you need to understand what really happened the night Audrey Bennett vanished. Now, stories like this take a long time to build. If you want more of them in your feed, hit subscribe. Let's see how Cole handles what's coming. 15 years ago, Cole and Audrey's marriage wasn't just falling apart, it was rotting from the inside. What looked, from the outside, like a golden couple, him, the confident heir to his family's real estate company, her, the sharp, quiet accountant who kept the books, was actually two people who had stopped trusting each other months before anyone noticed. Audrey had found something in the company's financial records that she wasn't supposed to find. She didn't go to the police right away. She didn't go to the press. She did something far more dangerous in Cole's eyes. She quietly made copies of everything, hired her own lawyer, and started building a case. The night she signed the divorce papers, she didn't just walk away from a marriage. She walked away with a folder of evidence tucked under her arm. And then she vanished. No car found, no body found, no sign of her anywhere. The police looked at Cole first, of course. They always look at the husband first. For months, his face was on the local news. Neighbors stopped meeting his eyes at the grocery store. Reporters camped outside his office. But there was no evidence, no crime scene, no proof of anything. Just an empty case file in a town full of whispers. Eventually, the whispers faded. The case went cold. Cole took over the family business, moved into a quieter neighborhood a few towns over, and spent a decade and a half convincing himself and everyone around him that Audrey had simply run, that she'd left to punish him, that wherever she was still out there, hiding, and someday this would all just fade away completely. 15 years is a long time, long enough to make a man feel safe again. That safety ended tonight, the second he opened his front door. The girl standing on his porch looks about 15 years old. She's soaked from the rain, arms wrapped around a worn backpack like it's the only thing holding her upright. And when Cole looks into her eyes, something in his chest goes cold. Because those are Audrey's eyes. That is Audrey's exact posture, the way she used to stand with her weight on one hip when she was about to say something she'd rehearsed. "Can I help you?" Cole asks, his voice tighter than he means it to be. The girl doesn't answer right away. She just studies him, the way someone studies a stranger they've only ever seen in old photographs. "You're Cole," she finally says. It isn't a question. He glances past her toward the street, suddenly aware of how exposed his porch light makes them both, aware of neighbors who might be watching from behind curtains. "Come inside," he says quickly. "It's pouring out here." She hesitates only a second before stepping through the door. "What's your name?" Cole asks, closing the door behind her a little too fast. "Maya," she says. And in that single word, Cole feels 15 years of carefully built peace begin to crack. The Cole leads Maya into the living room, gesturing toward the couch, though his mind is racing far ahead of his hospitality. He offers her a towel. He offers her tea. He is stalling, and they both seem to know it. "How do you know who I am?" he finally asks, sitting across from her, his knee bouncing with barely restrained nerves. Maya sets her backpack down carefully on the floor, as though it holds something fragile. "My mom told me about you," she says. "She told me a lot of things about you." The word mom lands in the room like a stone dropped into still water. "Who's your mother?" Cole asks, though some part of him already suspects the answer, already dreads it. Maya looks at him steadily. "Audrey Bennett." For a moment, Cole doesn't move, doesn't breathe. The name alone is enough to pull him backward through 15 years, back to a version of himself he thought he'd left behind for good. "That's not possible," he says quietly. "Audrey's been gone for 15 years. She's been gone from you for 15 years. Maya corrects him. That's different. But to understand the weight crushing down on Cole in this exact moment, you have to go back to what their marriage actually was before it collapsed. Because it wasn't just two people who'd grown apart. It was a woman who had discovered her husband's biggest secret, and a husband who was terrified of what she might do with it. Audrey wasn't just the wife who managed the household books. She was the one person inside Whitmore Realty who actually understood every account, every transfer, every signature on every page. And 6 months before the divorce, she found something that didn't add up. Company funds quietly siphoned into accounts that didn't belong to the business, documents with signatures that weren't quite right, weren't quite Cole's, but weren't quite anyone else's either. She confronted him exactly once. He denied everything, told her she was imagining patterns that weren't there. But Audrey wasn't the kind of woman who let a bad feeling go unexamined. She started keeping her own copies, quietly, carefully, building a paper trail that could either end a marriage or end a career, possibly both. The night she signed the divorce papers, she wasn't running from heartbreak. She was walking out the door with a folder that could have destroyed everything Cole had built. And then, for 15 years, she simply wasn't anywhere. I thought. Cole starts, then stops himself, choosing his next words like a man picking his way across thin ice. "The police searched for months. They never found anything. Not a car, not a trace. I thought." "You thought she was dead," Maya says flatly. "Everyone did. That's what she needed people to think." Cole's throat feels tight. Needed? Maya finally opens the zipper of her backpack and pulls out a heavy, road-worn leather notebook, its cover soft and cracked from years of handling. She knew what would happen if she went to the police that night, Maya says. Your family had lawyers, money, people who owed your father favors. She was pregnant, Cole. She wasn't just protecting evidence anymore. She was protecting me. The room goes utterly silent. 15 years of careful, comfortable denial collapses in an instant. Cole stares at the notebook in Maya's hands like it's a live wire. She was pregnant, he repeats slowly, as if saying it aloud might make it less true. With me? Maya says. She found out 2 weeks before she filed for divorce. She always said that was the moment everything became simple for her. She wasn't just protecting a case file anymore. She was protecting a life that hadn't started yet. She opens the notebook to the first worn page, her fingers moving with the practiced care of someone who has read these words 100 times before. She wrote in this almost every week, Maya says. For years, she wanted me to have it. She wanted me to actually understand, not just be told. Maya begins reading, her voice quiet but steady. If you're reading this, it means I finally told you, or you finally found your way to him on your own. I need you to know, Maya, that I never stopped protecting you, even when it looked like I disappeared. I disappeared so you could exist safely. I disappeared so no one could ever use you as a bargaining chip in something you had nothing to do with. Cole sits frozen, listening. We moved 4 times in your first 2 years. I changed my name twice. I worked 2 jobs at a diner outside a town so small it didn't even have its own zip code on some maps. It wasn't the life I imagined, but it was safe, and it was ours. Maya flips forward several pages, her thumb pausing on a section clearly reread many times. I kept every document, every transfer record, every falsified signature, every piece of proof that Cole moved money out of that company in ways his own father never knew about. I never went to the police, not because I was afraid of losing, but because I knew exactly how his family operates. They would have buried the case, and buried me along with it, and taken my daughter to do it. Cole opens his mouth to argue, then closes it again. There's nothing to argue. Every word lands exactly where it's meant to. I built a plan instead. A quieter one. A patient one. I found a lawyer I could trust completely. Someone with no connection to Cole's world at all. I gave her everything, and I gave her one very specific instruction. If anything ever happened to me, she would prepare my daughter to finish what I started on the exact day she turned 15. Old enough to understand it. Old enough to carry it. Old enough that no one could call it a child's mistake. Maya looks up from the page, meeting Cole's eyes directly for the first time since she read the sentence. She got sick 2 years ago, Maya says quietly. It moved fast. She didn't get to see me turn 15, but she planned every part of this so carefully that it didn't matter whether she was here for it or not. That for a long moment, Cole says nothing at all. The man who spent 15 years convincing himself Audrey had simply abandoned him, now understands, in painful and complete detail, exactly how wrong that story was. She built her entire life around protecting you, he finally says, his voice hollow. And around exposing me. She built her entire life around you never getting away with it. Maya corrects gently. There's a difference. Cole looks at the notebook, then at the girl holding it, and something in his expression begins to shift. Not toward guilt exactly, not yet, but toward the sharp, dawning realization that whatever comfortable ending he imagined for this conversation, it is not the one that's coming. Cole stands up abruptly, pacing toward the window, his composure finally starting to crack at the edges. So, what exactly is this? He demands. You came here to read me a dead woman's diary? To make me feel guilty about something that happened 15 years ago? No, Maya says, calm in a way that unsettles him more than anger would. I came here because she planned it this way. Cole turns back toward her, his voice sharpening. You're a kid. You're 15 years old, standing alone in a stranger's house at night. Do you understand how reckless that is? Do you have any idea what could happen to you here? It's a threat disguised as concern, and they both know it. Maya doesn't flinch. I'm not alone, she says. I was never going to be alone tonight. My mom made sure of that too. Cole takes a step toward her, his frustration curling into something colder. Give me the notebook, he says. No, Maya replies simply. Maya, you can yell, you can threaten me, you can try to take it, she says, voice steady despite the tremor Cole can hear underneath it. But it won't matter, because the notebook isn't the only copy, and it was never the real leverage. Cole stops mid-step. What are you talking about? Maya reaches into her backpack one more time and pulls out a sealed envelope, setting it deliberately on the coffee table between them. A week ago, my mom's lawyer filed everything, she says. Every financial record, every falsified signature, every account you thought no one would ever trace back to you. It's sitting with a federal fraud office and 2 investigative reporters right now. Sealed. Waiting. Cole's face drains of color. Waiting for what? For me, Maya says. I have a phone call to make tonight. If I make it by 9 o'clock, everything stays sealed, untouched forever. And if you don't? Then at 9:01, it's not sealed anymore. Cole's eyes flick instinctively to the clock on his living room wall. It's 8:45, 15 minutes. This is insane, he says, his voice rising, panic breaking through the practiced calm he's worn like armor for 15 years. You expect me to believe a 15-year-old girl is holding my entire life in her hands over one phone call? I expect you to understand that my mother spent the last 2 years of her life making absolutely sure of it, Maya says. She didn't trust luck. She didn't trust apologies. She trusted paperwork, timing, and people who had no reason to protect you. Cole looks at the envelope on the table, then at the clock, then at the girl standing in his living room with his ex-wife's exact steady gaze. For the first time in 15 years, he understands there is no escaping this conversation. Not with denial, not with anger, not with threats. There is only one door left open to him, and it's closing fast. What do you want? Cole finally asks, his voice quieter now, stripped of its earlier edge. Money? Is that what this is? No, Maya says. My mom didn't want your money. She wanted the truth to exist somewhere outside of your control. That's what I want too. She pulls one final folded paper from her backpack and sets it on the table beside the sealed envelope. This is a full written confession. Everything you did. The accounts, the signatures, the years my mother spent running because of it. You sign it, and it goes into the same lawyer's hands as everything else, held privately unless it's ever needed. Cole stares at the page like it might bite him. And if I refuse? Then I make the call at 9, and the federal documents speak for themselves instead. Maya says. Either way, the truth comes out tonight, Cole. The only choice you actually have is whether it comes out through your own signature or through someone else's investigation. The clock reads 8:52. Cole sits down slowly, picks up a pen from the side table with a hand that isn't quite steady, and begins to read the confession line by line. Every falsified signature, every diverted account, every year Audrey spent running so their daughter could grow up somewhere safe. When he finally signs his name at the bottom, his voice comes out barely above a whisper. There's one more thing, Maya says, pushing a second sheet across the table. A transfer authorization. The exact amount you diverted 15 years ago moved into a trust for my education and for the shelter that helped my mom and me more than once when we had nowhere else to go. Cole signs that too, his hand shaking, 15 years of carefully maintained control dissolving into something that looks, for the first time, like genuine remorse. At exactly 9 hours, Maya picks up her phone and makes the call. Just a few quiet words to a lawyer who has clearly been waiting for exactly this moment for a very long time. "It's done," Maya says simply, hanging up. "Everything stays sealed, as long as you actually follow through on what you signed." Cole nods, unable to find any words that feel adequate for the moment. Maya gathers the notebook, the diary of a woman who spent 15 years quietly, patiently building toward this exact night, and slides it carefully back into her backpack. She pauses at the door, glancing back one last time. "She never hated you, you know," Maya says quietly. "She used to write that hate would have made all of this so much simpler. She just wanted it to be true finally. All of it. Out in the open." Then she steps out into the night, leaving Cole standing alone in a house that suddenly feels far too large and far too quiet. About a week later, the trust fund is fully established. The confession is filed exactly as promised. Cole's name spreads through the same kind of hushed, disbelieving whispers that once followed Audrey's disappearance, except this time, the whispers are finally telling the truth. And somewhere in a small, quiet town, a 15-year-old girl starts her life over, not carrying the weight of her mother's secret anymore, but wearing her mother's gold watch on her wrist. No longer a symbol of an unsolved mystery. Now finally, it's a symbol of a promise kept, where a year passes, and the story of Cole Whitmore fades from local headlines the way most scandals eventually do, replaced by newer names, newer secrets. But in the small town where Maya finally settles for good, something quieter and far more permanent takes root. The scholarship trust, funded entirely by the money Cole was forced to return, doesn't just cover Maya's tuition. Within the first year, it quietly helps 3 other kids from the same shelter where Audrey once found refuge. Kids whose names Maya doesn't know yet, but whose stories, she suspects, aren't so different from her own. She keeps the notebook in a drawer beside her bed, not because she needs to read it every night anymore, but because some nights she still wants to hear her mother's voice, even secondhand, even in ink instead of sound. On the anniversary of the night she knocked on Cole's door, Maya doesn't think about the fear she felt standing on that porch, or the anger in Cole's voice when he first understood why she'd come. She thinks about her mother, sitting alone in some small rented room 15 years earlier, pregnant and frightened and utterly determined, writing the first page of a plan she would never live to see finished herself. She thinks about how her mother trusted a version of Maya she hadn't even met yet. Trusted that whoever her daughter turned out to be, she would be strong enough to walk into that house and finish what had been started so long ago. And every time Maya glances down at the gold watch on her wrist, she feels the weight of that trust settle into something steady and warm, instead of something heavy. Her mother never got the chance to see her stand in that living room, never got to hear her own words read aloud in her daughter's voice. But somewhere in the quiet space between grief and pride, Maya believes, has to believe, that her mother already knew exactly how that night would end, because she planned every second of it herself. Cole, for his part, keeps his end of the agreement year after year, transfer after transfer, signature after signature. Not out of kindness, most people in town agree, but because he understands, finally, that some debts don't disappear just because the person you owe them to has. And every October, when the rain returns to that same quiet street, Maya sits by her window and thinks not about the woman who vanished, but about the mother who never really left at all.